Hello, all of you I Can Do Anything podcast listeners. I am your host, Robin Stucco. And today we have an entrepreneur, somebody in the sales arena, and a published author. Please welcome to the podcast, Rana Salman.
Hi, Robin.
How are you today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you. We were connected and I was really interested in your background and a bit embarrassed to say this, but you can do anything. I have always been afraid of sales. And when I saw that in your history about this sales journey that you had been on, I thought I have to have this person on the podcast because I am petrified of sales. Tell us how you entered into the sales arena and actually your beginning journey.
Oh, excellent question. So just like many people, I didn't plan to get into sales. I was a nerd. I love to learn and study. So I was honestly getting my Ph.D. and my goal was to be a researcher. And then I took a class about consulting and sales. And I thought, well, maybe I can get into it for a year or so or whatever, and then maybe I'll find something else. And so I applied for a job and I got into it and I started loving the level of influence that you can have and also the impact that you can have in sales. You said you're a little scared about sales, but I think we're all sellers, Robin, right? When you reached out and invited me to the podcast, and I saw your value proposition of truly lifting people up and believing that you can do anything. You sold me on that, right? You sold me because you got to my heart. You got to my to my also my logic, my brain, because I also want to talk about what I do and how we can help people. And so I think at the root of sales is really where we're influencing a behavior and we're solving a fundamental problem or we're driving an initiative. If you're a good seller and if you're a professional seller also, you truly start looking at this as almost like your calling because you're in it for a long time and it's not easy. There's a level of rejection is so high. But when you think about it, not about you and your commission, when you start thinking about it, I'm helping someone. It changes the way you approach it. And also you end up building friendships, building trust with other professionals and with customers and partners throughout.
Tell us about your mindset. Did you have that mindset right off the bat that you were there to help people? Or did you cultivate that through all of the different learnings that you had through each exchange?
Oh, great example. So a little bit about my background. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. I immigrated to the United States when I was 11 years old. We were a family of six, 4 kids and mom and dad. And each one of us came with, I think, one bag and one luggage. And we had to restart. And by restarting, we worked really, really hard. That was one thing that my parents instilled in us is that this is the land of opportunities. You can do anything you set your mind to. And you don't let anyone stop you from going after your dreams as long as you are doing it with integrity and you're doing something good to the world. And I think having that, in addition to that, Robin, I was helped a lot in my life with teachers, as English is my second language. I had people that truly helped me and believed in me. And as I got older, that help, that help that I received, I also wanted to pay it forward. And I think that stuck with me as I got older and as I started selling to recognize that we're dealing with a human being and that person has feeling, has emotions, has problems. And my job is if I can help in that little problem, solve a little problem for you so that you can focus on something else. I think when you approach it as you're not selling to a faceless entity, but you're building a connection with a human and building that trust, it changes. But it really goes back to my background, how I was raised, and also with how people help me be where I am today.
Who sticks out, if you're able to say their name? Who are the top
Absolutely.
maybe 2 or 3 people that stick out to you? And what did they do in order to encourage and help you?
Yeah, so of course, my mom and dad. I mean, I have parents that truly sacrificed everything and came to the United States in their mid-30s and really started over and worked in fast food restaurants and showed us that we can make it, and we can work hard, and we can have the discipline to make it. So mom and dad are the first two. And of course, I have a math teacher named Mr. Rusty Hilst, and Mr. Hilst has changed my life in ways where I took math, Robin, throughout high school, and he was my honors math teacher. And then I got to calculus. And calculus, for some reason, it was hard for me. And it was hard for me. There's a lot of problem stories that they would tell you stories, and then they would ask you to derive the answers. And it was hard for me because, one, English was my second language, and I was still newer to the United States. And I remember getting my first F, I failed that test. And as an immigrant who all her life I was taught, you got to get good grades, you got to keep going, you got to make it, right? I thought, oh my gosh, I'm failing. And I remember going to Mr. Hilst in his off hours and knocking at the teacher's lounge and saying, I want to talk to you. And he opened the door very calmly. And I explained to him why I wanted to drop that class. And I said, Mr. Hilst, you don't understand. My education is my everything. That's my only way out. And I'm a senior. I want to go to good college. I want to do great. And if I get an F, that's not going to help me. And I remember Mr. Hilst listened. He listened and he acknowledged my frustration. He acknowledged how sad I was. And I was ugly crying, which is so embarrassing. But then he gave me perspective. And he said, before you drop, he goes, I will support you. But before you drop that class, I want you to think about just life, how you're going to be faced with diversity, and how you're going to want to quit, but you want to try to make it. You want to try to do it, and it's not easy. And then he promised, he said, look, if you come in, we had 0 hour, which was at 7 a.m. in the morning for calculus. He said, I will come in early, and if you come in early, I will tutor you. And I believe in you, Rana. I believe in you. And he looked at me straight in the eye. I believe in you. And he goes, I want you to go home, and I want you to sleep on it and think about it. And I went home and I'm like, darn it, he's right. And I remember the next day I was there early waiting for him as he walked in. I said, I'm in. And I ended up with, I think, an A+ or like really high grade, but it was a turning point for me because it made me see that, I'm going to fail. I faced adversity before and I overcame it. I can do that in math. And it also, as a woman, it also made me recognize, oh, I can be really good in math too, right? And so that was a turning point for me.
How often do you think back to that time of that turning point and how you continually tried to understand calculus, getting to the point of it wasn't so bad, and then getting to the point of getting an A in the class? How many times do you think back on that throughout your sales career or your career in general, or life in general? It doesn't necessarily need to be your career.
Yeah, I reflect that a lot. I have 2 boys, and I share that story with them when they're facing adversity, because it was a turning point, right? If I decided to take that easy way out, would I have got my PhD? Would I have gone into sales? Would I have opened my own company? Because let me tell you, there's a lot of challenges along the way that you got to have that discipline and that growth mindset to say, okay, I'm learning. Okay, what's next? I'm going to get back up. And I think that experience has definitely helped me. And I reflect back on it, of course.
Thinking back to challenges that you've had throughout your career, starting your business, writing your book, how many times do you think back to, hey, I've done this before, I need to do it again, I need to persevere, I need to buckle down? Maybe not quantify the number of times, but does that time still come back to you? Like, I've just got to get this done.
Yeah. I think for all of us, we're human beings, right? And when something gets tough, you think, well, why am I doing this? And I think what's important to me is when I've developed a lot of grit, just being raised and facing adversity and having to fit in, in a system that I didn't know how to fit in. But also it's always going back to your why. I've learned as I got older that really having those non-negotiable, those values, those why we're doing it, and going back to the why, and then surrounding yourself with people that believe in you and that can knock some sense out of you when you are down, because we're humans. And it always happens when you're like, man, it has to be easier. I could have a job down the street and I could make that money. But then you have to go back to the why. And then you have to have people around you that says, we believe in you. Like look what you've done. And I think that's kind of how I've gone through some of these moments.
You mentioned that you have your own business. Tell us about that.
So I have been so blessed. I work with hypergrowth in large organizations around the world to help elevate their sales, their sales organization's performance. And so what I work on, Robin, is I work on helping sales organization create a sales strategy. If they have a sales strategy, then I work with them on coaching their people and upleveling their leadership skills, as well as developing processes to streamline and standardize. And then also to execute on that strategy, you need that training. So I'm in front of these reps that I was a rep their age, and I felt the challenges and I felt the fear. And now I am fortunate to be standing in front of them and say, yeah, it's not easy. It's going to be hard. But when you have that growth mindset and when you put your mind on it, and you have the discipline and you learn and you put in the hours and the hard work, everyone can do this. And you have it. And to do this, at the heart of this is your customers, that you truly care and you have a heart of service.
What is your favorite success from your business to date?
So I can't mention because there's several. I can't mention names, but there's several. I think landing my first account was really incredibly humbling and exciting. I think when you're on your own, even though I was successful in the past, when it's your own name and you have your own name on it, and you really do it the way you believe is the right way, and you get that deal, that was a win for me. And it wasn't a win because of the deal size. It was a win because it made me see that I can do it. And that to me opened the door, because once you have that confidence and that, yes, I can do it, all you need, and I tell that to entrepreneurs and to sellers, all you need is that first deal. And once you win it and you taste that win, then you're like, okay, I can do this. The second area is of course my book. Coming from a place where education was key, where my parents instilled in us that knowledge is power, that no one can take that away from you, and you can use it for good. Having read, being a read books, now I published my own book with McGraw-Hill. That was a moment in my life where I had to look back and say, wow, good job. Now there's a lot of sacrifices that goes with that, because I also had to run my business and write a book. But it's one of the areas in my life that I would look back and say, wow, that is a success. And of course, just growing the business, right? Usually businesses, the first few years are the riskiest, right? So sticking in it and having the grit and the discipline and believing in the purpose of why we're here, to me, that is success, because it's very easy to take the easy way out. And so those are some things.
When you were talking about your business and writing the book, you were talking about sacrifices. What could somebody take away from your experience that you found would be a helpful tip for people, or areas to stay away from during that time frame? Because I do feel like a lot of people that do listen to this podcast are in that scenario. Several of us are interested in writing our own books. Several of us are in the middle of it. How did you juggle business, family, writing a book, successes, and things that maybe you would do differently?
Oh, great question. And I'm not perfect, so I probably didn't do it the right way, but here's some things that I've done. So on Saturdays, I didn't have a lot of time during the week because my business is busy and I focus on my customers. But on Saturdays, I would write. And the way I did it is my son had homework, so him and I would pick different coffee shops in Austin, some eclectic ones, and we would have a fun time finding them Friday night. And then Saturdays we would go and we would sit for hours. He's doing his homework and I'm working. And as we're driving to these places, we're talking. So I'm connecting with him. And so my book, the chapters there's memories attached to it. When I go on vacations, I intentionally took my laptop and wrote, because I wanted to remember that I was traveling and writing. And these stories came about as I was sitting before everyone woke up, I would wake up and I would write some, and it was a good feeling to relate the book to some of the happy times when we're together as a family. Now, are there things that I would change? I think I was, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm hard on myself. And so I would look at things, and sometimes I would take even more time than maybe I should, because I'm rereading and I'm trying to figure it out, when maybe it was good enough for the editor to review and then give me input and feedback. I also had, if you all are writing a book, I also had help, right? It's so easy for us to think that we can do it all. But we need, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, to recognize that we need to be asking for help. So I would write the draft, I would do everything, and then I had an amazing editor review it, give me her feedback, take it to the next level. Then it comes back to me, and then I would change, I would update, and then it would go to the big publishers, our amazing editor at McGraw-Hill. And so that's where I would also say, ask for help. Even if you are brilliant at it, make sure that when you are adding things to your plate, that you're also identifying areas where you can let go of things. Because at the end of the day, we're human beings. And if you're spreading yourself too thin, it's going to impact your performance.
I think so. When you talk about your editor helping, as in a ghostwriter, or just making slight edits for you to go back and rewrite?
Excellent. Not ghostwriting. I would write, for example, my thoughts, because it is my expertise, and then she would make it better. And sometimes she would write drafts that are amazing after I dump everything into what I want, and we would go back and forth. So it becomes almost like, okay, yeah, you're not catching my voice. This is what I mean. This is my stories. This is my examples. And so, yeah, so it was a partnership.
Let's talk about the book. How did you land on the title?
So it is part of McGraw-Hill's Essential series. So they're amazing in the way they think, and how can they help the business professionals. And they created a series called The Essentials. And so there's coaching essentials, there is presentation essentials, there's time management essentials, and then comes sales essentials. And to me, it is so true, because even before McGraw-Hill reached out, I already started writing a book, because my goal was to write a book. And that's what I tell you, in the universe, when you believe in something and you open it up. In fact, I had half the chunk of the book already written. Of course, we took it to the next level and expanded it when McGraw-Hill called. But it was looking at the fundamentals and the foundational and the essentials. So it was really exciting when I got the email that they're interested in talking. And I thought, wow, the universe, right? It's all happening. And I do believe also, for your listeners, that things happen at the right time. They may not be at our time. Like I know, Robin, you probably think backward on things that happened and you're wondering, why did it happen? But now we understand why. I tell you an example in sales. I'm the type that I love doing sales calls, and I do prepare for these sales calls. I spend time, make sure that we have everything ready, that I'm focusing on the buyer. And one Friday afternoon, I had a sales call with an executive, and he canceled that meeting, rescheduled the meeting. And I was so upset. I was like, man, I worked, I'm ready. I want to talk. And I remember my boss saying, Rana, maybe this happened for a reason. Do you really want to talk to someone on a Friday afternoon where they're ready for their weekend and they're probably really tired? And I thought, wow, maybe she's right. Because then I had a meeting with him Tuesday morning, and we ended up closing that deal, and he was refreshed and he was apologetic and he was excited to learn more. So those are kind of lessons that I look back, that things happen for a reason. And we got to believe that.
Our listeners know that in the previous podcast with Ashley and I, and then moving on with myself doing the interviews, we are big proponents of the universe. And we absolutely believe in manifesting. We believe in how things work. We believe in things happen for a reason. Timing is majorly important. I just turned 54 last week, and I got to tell you, I feel like I'm 20.
Happy
It's almost,
birthday.
Thank you. I feel as if that is absolutely correct, because would I have received the message in my 20s? Absolutely not. 30s, probably not. 40s, And it takes you until a certain time to hear the message, to be prepared, to have the life experiences that you need to have in order for everything to come together. So I am a huge proponent of that.
And Robin, I would tell you, I mean, your story is amazing. I want your listeners, someone needs to interview you. You're amazing.
Thank you.
But one of the things that I also is important for us to note is that trust our gut. And I think it comes with age, and there's a science behind it. When people are trusting their gut, they're basing it on a lot of experiences that they've had, and our brain takes shortcuts to kind of put the blocks together. But as entrepreneurs, as we get into making decisions, yes, logic is really important. Like, I look at the data, I look at the facts, but also don't discount your intuition. And I had to learn that as I got older, is okay, my gut tells me that there's something here. And sometimes when I don't trust it, I see, ooh, I should have trusted. And I think it comes with age and wisdom.
I think you're right. I'd like to go back to the book, Sales Essentials, the tools you need at every stage to close more deals and crush your quota. I have heard, I don't have the book, unfortunately, yet, but I did go through and preview a little bit of what was out there, and I will put the link in the show notes. But it talks about innovation and creativity. Tell us a little bit about how that comes into Sales Essentials.
Yeah. Great question. So one of the things that our customers are looking for us is to design solutions for them, is to help them, right? Like, when you sell something, you have to fit a need. You're trying to either solve a problem, drive an initiative, and you need to be a little bit creative, right? You got to listen to your buyers and your customers, and then come back with a solution that will help meet their needs. And to do that, that requires a growth mindset, that requires innovation, that requires creativity. And also that requires sometimes questioning the status quo, because in the world that we live in today, there's a lot of uncertainties. And in the past, we used to land these really large whale deals, but with the economic uncertainties that are happening, our deals are not as large as they used to. And in fact, we got to meet our buyers where they're at. We got to meet our customers where they're at. And sometimes maybe their payment structure, they want it different than we've had it before. Or sometimes the contract terms, they're asking us, hey, can you work with us? And you go internally to the organization and you ask, hey, can we change that? And someone says, no, that's no. And you say, why? Well, that's because we've been doing it all this way for a long time. That's when we got to ask the question. That's not enough, right? And that's where we got to push a little. And of course, with professionalism and always with integrity and aligned to ethics and making sure that we're taking care of our company as well. But I always say that the best reps are disruptors, the ones that ask the question, why not? I remember early on in my career, I read an article in Harvard Business Review, and it says that the question why not changes things, because sometimes people do things because they've done it and for a long time this way. But when you say why not, and their answer is because we've done it this way so long, that's not enough. And as sellers, we are disruptors. We bring in the ideas to the company, what our customers are saying, what we're hearing. And yes, sometimes we're going to go back to our buyers and say, look, we can't do that because X, Y, and Z. But here's how we can collaborate and work together.
Has working from home changed the sales landscape for you at all?
So I have, before COVID, I've worked from home for another company. So I got to learn how to sell in a virtual environment. But for the sales landscapes, yes, absolutely, virtual selling has changed the way we sell. Look, a higher percentage of our customers, and you can see research about it, they are preferring the remote human interactions. And so we have to meet where our buyers are at, and we have to have a hybrid approach. And what we're also seeing is that the traditional way of selling, where I have to get in front of the physically get in front of you all the time throughout my sales process as an enterprise rep, is not ever coming back. What's coming back is that it's going to be almost like more virtual and some face-to-face. Now, what I would tell you, that face-to-face, you still need to have face-to-face, because there is a human interaction that is important. That physical human connection is really important, Robin, to building relationship and to building trust. So we can't just get comfortable and just have it behind that little webcam. We need to make an effort to get in front of our buyers, but we may not be able to get in front of them like we used to be. Now, if you talk to enterprise reps before COVID, of course they did virtual selling, but it may have been that they did more of the face-to-face than the virtual. Now it's kind of flipped, the model flipped.
So with your mindset and being so positive, and I see you as definitely a forward thinker, how has your mindset changed, or has it, with in-person versus virtual? Or do you have a pretty flexible mindset depending on the situation that you're in?
Excellent. What you just said, you have to be flexible, right? You have to meet your buyers where they're at. And so understanding their requirements, understanding their preference is really important, and working with them. And also, if we want to meet with your buyers in person, make it a case of why you want to meet with them in person. People are busy, people are stressed, there's a lot of layoffs happening, there's a lot of uncertainty. So time is also finite. So if you're meeting with someone in person, you have to think of what's in it for them and why do you want to meet with them. But you always need to be flexible to the situation. I think that's what COVID taught us, is we have to be flexible, we have to adapt, and human beings are great at adapting, right? It's hard. Change is not easy, but each one of us, when we have that mindset, and for COVID, it was survival. And man, all of us transformed to virtual in a week. We were all on, and we were having conversations, and we were going around our business. And so I think we need to also give credit as our species that we do adapt. I mean, that's why we're here. We've adapted.
With your business, writing your book, how do you personally relax and recharge your batteries?
Ooh, excellent question. So I am a runner. I've been running since I was, very young, maybe 7 years old is when I started running. And every morning, I'm up at between 5 and 5:30, and I run 3 miles every day. And then on Saturdays, I run long miles, my long runs. And I do races, and I do half marathon. I just ran my first marathon last year. And so, yeah, so running for me is a way to calm my mind, to also feel myself and to go back to being anchored. It also helps me, it does release dopamine and happy hormones. So you always see me after my run, I'm like, hey. So the lucky customers that get right after my run, they're getting a really happy person. Robin, I also believe that you have to find something, and this isn't new to me. I've started it in the last several years. Find one thing that is hard for you to accomplish, but you want, and it doesn't have to be work related. For me, I don't know how to swim. I'm middle-aged person that don't know how to swim. Now my kids know how to swim. I made sure that they are really good in swimming. So as for this year, last year was running the marathon. This year I decided, okay, I'm going to learn how to swim. And as embarrassing as it is, I'm going to hire a coach and I'm going to learn how to swim. And I think we started in March, and I can now do 50 meters back and forth. And I'm actually swimming. Was it hard? Oh my gosh, it was so hard because you also don't have time. And it was so hard because my body as a runner, my form is very different. And I'm a land person. Like, I like to touch the land. And now suddenly I'm in water. And so there's still work on my form, but it's an amazing experience when you let your brain work on something that you don't know how to do, and you start working through it, and so you start seeing some little wins. It's incredible. And I would recommend that for people. Now, I don't have a lot of time, so I do 5 in the morning. I do some of this, but you always can find time to take care of yourself. And you should find time, especially as an entrepreneur and especially in sales, because it's brutal. High rejection rates, our mental health. There's data that's showing us how burnout some our sellers are. So you need to find time to help take care of yourself.
Yeah, we didn't even hit on the rejection rate of sales and how you deal with that.
Great question. So it's always hard to lose. I mean, sellers are competitive, right? And if you put your heart into a deal, you want to win it. This is how we make our money. This is how we have provide for our families. And so you have to change your mindset. And I talk about it in my book. about how do you change your mindset. Number one, recognize that rejection is going to happen. If you're not getting rejected, you're not doing your job in sales. Mathematically speaking, you got to get more rejection to get to that yes. So rejection is part of this profession. Number two, allow yourself to grieve. So here's what I have learned to do. If I lose a deal, I give myself a 1 day to grieve. And grieve meaning, man, I lost something that was really important to me, that I've been spending months trying to show how I can add value, that I believe in my solution, how I can help my buyer. And now I got rejected. It doesn't feel good. So that's one thing, that I acknowledge those feelings. And then I also go for a run and get it out. And then, but the next day, Robin, I programmed myself to say, okay, what's next? Okay, let's put that behind. Let's talk about the lessons and let's focus on what's next. Let's look at some of the things we learned, but also let's look at the things that we've done really well. And having that mindset has helped me in terms of getting through some of that rejection. And of course, eating right also helps, and also making sure that there are time for sleeping. I don't sleep. I'm not a big sleeper. I don't do the 8 hours, but I learned as I got older that our body needs some sleep. So now I try to get like 5 to 6 hours, but in sales, you're always going and going and going. It's that rush, but it will catch up with you as you get older.
Yes, yes, it will. I am a big proponent for sleep as well. I do get almost my 8 hours almost every
Lucky.
night. It is very important. Yes. What is something that you would like our listeners to know before we wrap up today?
I think in the theme of I can do anything. I think if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, or if you're trying to sell your idea inside, with your company, or you're trying to get a new headcount or a new budget, a higher budget, bigger budget with your organization as a leader, I think you got to learn how to sell. All of us are sellers. And I think that's really important, that everyone that is listening, that looks at themselves as seller, even if you're looking for a job, you're the product now. Now you're selling your value. And that's, I think, where when people are picking that book to look into, how can I use that to influence, to do good, to help people find solutions as they're reading that book, if they're not in sales.
Something else I had a question about too. I'm not in sales, but from my research that I've been doing on your book, it sounds like your book could help people regardless if they're in sales or not. Is that a true statement?
I would say, if you look at it from a perspective of influence, right? Like if I'm trying to influence someone's behavior, if I'm trying to sell an idea, if I'm trying to find a job, there are components of the book that absolutely apply to it. Now it is about, professional selling. But look, if I am trying to, for example, getting in an interview and trying to find a job, that's part of prospecting. Prospecting is about landing a sales meeting. Look at it from an interview perspective, job interview, you're trying to land that interview. So there are things we talk about, fundamentals, that you can leverage in your job hunt. The second thing is when you land that interview, right? It's in the book, we talk about the discovery meeting, the first meeting. Look, first impression matters. We talk about, what does it mean to have a good attitude? What does it mean to make sure that your artificial communication, your attire sends the right message? What does it mean to have an agenda in place? What does it mean to prepare for these meetings and research your buyers, research your hiring manager? So when you're meeting with them, then you can add value. You can share how you can add value. What's your unique value proposition versus others? So when you look at it that way, there's things that you can take out of it. Now, of course, we talk about business to business selling. So there's more complexity that we talk about in the book, but absolutely there's some tidbits that can apply.
I also feel like if you open up your mind and just listen to the message, you'll be able to use whatever that message is in just about any area of your life. You're always learning. You can always learn something about anything. I just want our listeners to know that you can read this book, even if you're not in the sales world, and you're still going to get something out of it with that open mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there are stories also in the book about lessons learned, about being vulnerable, about sharing my background that people can relate to. At the end of the day, when you look at your dreams, the life that we have, it's very small, right? And what we do with it is in our control. And I do believe in that. I believe that when you're reading this book and you're going to read about my stories, my first deal, my mistakes that I've made, hopefully it's going to inspire you to say, you know what, this person from her background, she could make it with discipline, with hard work, with integrity. I can make it. So
I love that. How can people get a hold of you?
LinkedIn. So I am very active on LinkedIn, and I'm also very active with people that comment and that engage with my posts. I make sure that we engage, we collaborate, because like you, Robin, I believe I can learn from everyone. And so when I meet someone, I want to learn about your background. I want to learn about you. So LinkedIn is the way to reach out to me, connect with me, mention this podcast so I can make sure that we can relate as well. And let's have a conversation and let's learn from one another. I think that's the beauty about this platform. And I don't work for them. So is that we can connect and we can learn from one another.
I will put that in the show notes. So anybody that wants to reach out to you, connect with you on LinkedIn, will have that link and they can click it and connect.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Robin. Thank you for your positive energy and all that you're bringing to the world. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I have had an absolute pleasure speaking to you and look forward to promoting your book.
Thank you. Have a great day, okay?
To all of our listeners, stay awesome and keep reaching for your anything.